In 2026, the most dangerous question emerged in the Middle East. Why did the US and Israel attack Iran now, and how far will this war expand? On February 28, 2026, a massive coordinated strike targeted Iran's nuclear and military facilities. This was Operation Lion's Roar. It wasn't just an air raid, it was a strategic offensive designed to dismantle Iran's nuclear program, missile capabilities, and command structure all at once. As a result, the entire Middle East began to be pulled into a vortex of war. To understand why, we must look at the roots of this conflict. The roots were planted in the tensions that began in October 2023, with ongoing operations against Iran-backed groups like Hamas and Hezbollah. But the decisive factor was the nuclear issue. The US and Israel concluded that an Iran with nuclear weapons would shatter the strategic balance. When nuclear negotiations collapsed in February 2026, military action became the chosen path to reshape the regional power structure. This war is not a simple state-to-state clash. It is a collision of three structural pillars: nuclear order, regional hegemony, and global stability. First is the clash of the nuclear order. Israel, a nuclear power itself, has maintained a zero-tolerance policy toward Iranian nuclear development. Second is the competition for Middle Eastern hegemony. Iran has expanded its influence through the axis of resistance spanning multiple nations. The third pillar is the maintenance of the US strategic order, aimed at securing energy supplies and critical maritime trade routes. As the war began, strikes spread across the region. Hundreds of Iranian military sites were targeted by US and Israeli forces. In a single wave, over 80 fighter jets were deployed to strike missile bases and command centers deep within Iranian territory. Iran responded immediately, utilizing drones and missiles to target multiple locations across Saudi Arabia, Qatar, and the UAE. In Bahrain, facilities belonging to the US Navy's Fifth Fleet came under attack, escalating the maritime dimension of the war. The human cost rose rapidly. By early March 2026, reports indicated that over 1,300 people had died in Iran alone. This conflict has already moved beyond a regional character. Experts now outline three possible scenarios for what happens next. The first is a limited war, where strikes conclude within weeks after neutralizing specific nuclear and military targets. The second is a full regional war, triggered if Hezbollah, Syrian forces, and various militias fully join the fray. The third is a global economic shock. If the Strait of Hormuz is blocked, key energy corridors would be paralyzed, sending oil prices soaring. This event leaves us with three vital lessons. First, the very structure of warfare is changing, with missiles, drones, and cyber attacks happening simultaneously. Second is the inextricable link between energy and the economy. Middle Eastern stability remains the heartbeat of global financial markets. Third is the reshaping of the world order. This war has become a testing ground for the new dynamics between major global powers. Conflicts in the Middle East have always changed the future, from the 1973 oil crisis to the Gulf War and the invasion of Iraq. The 2026 Iran war may be another such turning point. As we watch history unfold, remember, wars begin with guns, but history remembers why they began. Thank you for joining this deep dive into the forces shaping our world today. I am Dr. James. To understand the precision of Operation Lion's Roar, we must examine the specific intelligence that led to these targets. Intelligence agencies had been tracking underground enrichment sites for years. The strike aimed at the very heart of the centrifuge cascades. The effectiveness of Iranian drone swarms was met with next-generation interception technology, showcasing a new era of electronic warfare. Behind the scenes, diplomatic channels were buzzing. The role of regional neighbors was crucial in providing the logistical support needed. The kinetic strikes were preceded by massive cyber offensives, blinding the command and control systems of the adversary before the first jet arrived. We've seen immediate ripples in global logistics. Shipping insurance rates have skyrocketed, affecting everything from tech to agriculture. Crises like this often accelerate shifts in energy policy. The world is once again reminded of the vulnerability of fossil fuel corridors. The diplomatic stance of China and Russia remains a wild card. Their involvement or mediation could define the long-term resolution of this conflict. Amidst the strategy, the humanitarian need is urgent. International organizations are calling for safe corridors for civilians affected by the strikes. Looking at the Lion's Roar tactics, it's clear that the objective was decapitation of the command hierarchy, not just physical destruction. Public opinion across the globe is polarized. Large-scale protests have erupted, reflecting the deep-seated concerns about a broader global war. As an author observing these trends, I see a pattern of structural inevitability in how these powers have collided over decades. The US Fifth Fleet remains a dominant force, yet its vulnerability to asymmetric drone strikes has redefined naval doctrine in real time. The proxy war model is being tested. Can these non-state actors sustain a conflict when their central support is under direct fire? Artificial intelligence played a key role in target selection and risk assessment during the initial phases of Operation Lion's Roar. Is there a path to long-term stability? History suggests that military solutions are only temporary without a new diplomatic framework. Regional media narratives differ vastly, creating a complex information war alongside the physical conflict on the ground. We must also consider the cost of inaction. Policymakers argue that allowing the nuclear status quo to persist was the greater risk. Eventually, the talk will turn to reconstruction. The economic burden of rebuilding will likely reshape regional alliances for a generation. The moral dimension of this war cannot be ignored. The ethical implications of preemptive strikes are being debated in universities worldwide. In our connected age, nothing is hidden. The transparency of this conflict, broadcasted in real time, changes how the world reacts. To recap, we are seeing a fundamental shift in the nuclear order, a fight for regional power, and a challenge to the global status quo. Whatever the outcome, the landscape of the Middle East, and indeed the world, will never be the same after 2026. In times of uncertainty, understanding the why behind the headlines is our best defense against misinformation. Investors are fleeing to safe haven assets as the uncertainty of a long-term conflict looms over the global financial system. Is peace achievable through force? This is the paradox that has haunted this region for centuries, and 2026 is no exception. The technology seen in this conflict, like advanced drone swarms, will be studied by military academies for decades to come. Leaders across the region are walking a tightrope, balancing their national interests with the pressure of a shifting geopolitical landscape. Damage assessments show that while the physical structures were hit, the intellectual knowledge of the programs remains a long-term challenge. We must also be wary of information warfare. In 2026, distinguishing truth from coordinated propaganda is harder than ever. The legacy of this year will be written in the history books alongside the great shifts of the 20th century. As an observer of history, I believe we are currently living through one of its most pivotal chapters. Stay vigilant and stay informed. The world is interconnected in ways we are only beginning to truly understand. What happens in one corner echoes across the planet. Thank you for watching this 8-minute journey into our shared future. I look forward to our next deep dive. Goodbye for now.